So let's start with a project management game. So it's important that now I'm making a short presentation of the project management game. The slides are also available on Blackboard. You might have seen it. But it's important to mention that if you really want to do this project management game, you need to read the instruction carefully. So if you don't already have done that, do this, because otherwise you will probably not be able to play the game. These are just examples of where we have played it before, and this is something that we have actually been developing for the past 4 years, and it's gradually maturing more and more. So we're getting better and better at it, and we get better and better evaluations while we do it. And the basic idea is that it is actually for you to try out to manage a real project in an environment where we actually mirror the reality as much as we possibly can. So it's a lot about group work. You do it in your groups, and there are many different ways of doing it. It usually involves a lot of posters, post-its, and all the tools that we have been providing you, or some of the tools that you will be providing you throughout the course. Some of you might actually use, or you will also be using computers for the calculations part. So you will probably need to use a computer for doing some of the budgets and stuff like this. So, and basically the basic insight here is that you only learn how to manage projects by actually doing it. So you just need to experience what it actually takes. And then furthermore, it's also a fun team building exercise. So these are some of the statements that was been mentioned by the students before. It is a challenging game. Both today but also tomorrow. Today you will be working quite intensively with the actual planning phase of the game, and it will take approximately 3 to 5 hours. And tomorrow you will actually execute the plan that you've been developing. So it is fun, but it's also time consuming. So obviously you should also manage it in relation to all the other stuff that you also need to do with the final deliverables and so forth. As mentioned again, here are the minimum requirements for actually being a part of this game. Read the instructions. We know there's a lot of information there, but that's a part of the game. You need to understand how the setup of the game is, what are the requirements for the customer and so forth. Then you need to work on project scheduling and do a network plan, a Gantt chart to actually organize, to have an understanding of how everything is organized. You need to do proper risk management to investigate what could possibly go wrong here, and then take make contingency plans accordingly. You have to deal with people in the group. You have to deal with potential conflict and stress management, because we are pushing the envelope here, especially tomorrow, where we actually where we are executing the game. Team dynamics and communications. So basically, you get all of it here. This is the plan for the actual game. So now we're doing this short presentation, introduction to the game. Then after this lecture, you will. We ask you to take a test. It's not a part of, or quiz. It's not a part of the grades at all. But it's just for you to see whether you actually understood how the game is organized, the rules of the game, and so forth. And then if you don't get 100% correct, then you might need to just revisit some parts of the instructions here. It's basically just to test whether you actually understood what the game is about. Furthermore, there's another part of this test, and that is we would like you to test your confidence levels. So to what extent are you confident in what you actually do and what you're supposed to do? And we do use this for research purposes. So we gather a lot of data for these games that we have the intention of publishing in a few years. So then you plan the game, and that is going to take about 3 to 5 hours. I've collected some more posters, some more posters, and more drawing tools. So there's plenty of that available. And then basically you plan the project. And the whole ambition about planning the project is that at 5 today, you are submitting your bid for the project. You have to build an office building, and we have described what are the requirements for this in the instructions, what are the scope, and then basically you have to come up with your suggestion how much you can build this for. That is your bid. And that includes the time by which you will be able to hand over the office building to us, the client, and how much it will cost us. Okay? So these are the two fundamental inputs that you will have to give us. And you have to submit this using the Google form that I wrote to you this Saturday. Then, tomorrow, you have to be here a little before 9, where the game actually starts. We will be here around 8. And the way we'll organize this is you will be playing in your group areas, which means that the ones that are kind of located in 302, they'll be playing there. The ones that are located here will be playing here. You will be playing in your group, so where you usually sit. I will make sure that there's nobody else sitting out there. So the ones that are organized or out here will probably all be sitting in that area, and then we will leave the other part for the ones who don't, for some reason, don't want to play the game. Okay. I have to mention that I've managed to also book the other seats out here, so we have the whole thing for the rest of the week, and this is quite important, especially for the project game here. So the game starts, and the game is basically organized around Google Sheets. So this is probably the most advanced implementation of a Google Sheet solution you will see. We have been working quite hard on this. Originally, the game was based on some kind of text-based documents. Then we transferred it to Excel, which was a mess, and then basically we have transferred it into Google Sheet, and it actually works. And we have an overview of the logic and so forth. But it's fascinating to see what you actually is capable of just by using some of these existing not very advanced technologies. In order to get access to the Google Sheet, we will send you some login details for a special Google account that is capable of editing this Google Sheet. And then basically you will be playing the game by editing different fields of this Google Sheet. And then we have some game masters who will actually be opening the Google Sheets when you have to submit different things. Okay. And then it basically starts where you have to submit the decision form for the first week at 9:30. And then basically we run the game afterwards. And you'll submit decision every 10 weeks. And then in the beginning of every week, you will also be having feedback on how the progress of your project were the week before. I'll get back to this a little bit later. And then basically the game it continues until you complete it, or until it has taken 12 weeks. Then we are closing the game, and then you're not allowed to. We're not interested in your office building anymore. So, regarding the project here, it is an office building simulation. So you have to build, and it is to try to mirror a real-life situation here. The point here is that we have decided what we want. So this is, and then we will evaluate your tenders based on some kind of lump sum contract. So we know exactly what we want. So that will not change. So the scope and the purpose of the product will not change. And the ones that are actually that deliver the most successful project will win the game, and then we define the success in different ways. So just similar to the complexity game, the ones that are earning the highest profit, the lowest cost, and the quickest delivery, they are components of this competition. Yes, and then you plan the game today, and then we do it the execution tomorrow. When we actually do the execution tomorrow, it follows this plan. So the deadlines in the top, you have to ignore them. So today you'll submit your bid submission at 5, and then tomorrow at 9 you will receive information on the Google Sheet you'll be using. We will also provide you with information about all the bids that have been given, so you know the distribution. Some of you will have made too low or too high bids, so they are too unrealistic, and we change them. So if you are making a too high bid or too low bid, basically we change them to some that is more appropriate. Okay? And then basically you execute your plan subsequently. And you do this through this process. So by the end of week 0, you're making your first decisions. And decision is about, for instance, hiring people, allocating people. It's about ordering equipment, taking loans, and all this kind of stuff. So, and you do this by the end of every week. So, by the end of week 0, you will make decision for what is about to happen in week 1. Okay? Then week 1 goes, and then by end of week 1, you make the decision for what's going to happen in week 2. Do you see? That's D2. Just when you have submitted the decisions, you will see the result of what the progress report of what happened in week 1. So basically, you make your decision in advance somehow, so you always see the progress in hindsight, right? So in the beginning of week 2, you'll see what happened in week 1. And then at the end of week 2, you'll make decision for week 3. Do you see? So this is how it works. And this is actually very similar to what happens in projects. So whenever you're working in projects, of course, when you're working in projects where you actually have very knit group, like the project that you're working with right now, then you have a rather big detailed understanding of what's happening all the time. But when you're working on a big project, the progress is actually something that is hard to estimate, and that's something that there's a bit delayed. So that's also why we have the delay here. So basically, you're making decision without actually knowing the past progress, and then you have, of course, you might be in a situation where you have to replan and stuff like that. And you have to do this because every once in a while, for every week, there might be an announcement. An announcement can be many different things. It can both be opportunities, but it can also there might also arise or there might happen some events that potentially delay your project. And thus, in that case, of course, you need to take that into consideration in the decision you're about to make in the future. Okay, you might need to replan and all this kind of stuff. Do you follow this game logic?
Yes.
At least there's one that is listening here. So this is the first thing that you'll see when you see the Google Sheet. So here you see the bid. You have the group name, the group number, the price, and duration. And that is pre-coded by us. So that's a bid form. And that's a very, very first form. It also looks more like something like this. And the price will be used to calculate your payment milestones. Because the point is, whenever you are, similar to a real project, whenever you are asking for someone to do a project, you're not paying them in advance. So, and you're not paying it at the end of the project. So you usually have some kind of payment milestone or payment process. So And this is similar here in this project. So thus, you have to make sure that you have enough money throughout the whole duration of the project, in order to pay the workers and all this kind of stuff. Here we also state that if your price and duration are extremely unrealistic, far out in comparison to all other groups and to what we know is realistic, we will disregard your bid and consider the lowest realistic price and duration offered by the class. Okay. So it will still be realistic, the ones that we are adding to you, but it's we will change it. Okay. So this is how the decision form looks like, and this is how we basically, this is where you input the decision that you do every week. So at the end of every week. So here you can hire or fire workers. So that's one part. So basically, you can make sure that they actually will be available. And here you have to make sure that you actually hire them in advance, because there's a difference between hiring people and allocating people. So in order for you to allocate people to a specific activity, you need to make sure they are on site. And you do that by hiring them. But just like whenever you're hiring somebody else, you don't just hire them and then they work right afterwards, right? There is a period where they will not be working. So there's a week before you hire them to they're actually available for you on site. I mention this because it's important to manage. So here you enter the amount if you want to hire some workers, and if you also want to lay off the workers. At the same time, you can also order the equipment, and here we have different types of order processes. So you might actually have quick delivery or regular delivery, and that of course influences the price of the project. Then the next part here is about allocation of workers, and here we have three different types of workers. We have laborers, we have skilled workers, and then we have electricians. And this is actually where you have all the different activities, and this is where you allocate the workers to the activities. Okay. If a category is highlighted red, then you have allocated more workers than is available on site. And then there's no progress. And then you need to allocate workers every time, every decision form. So it's not something that you just do once. You need to make sure that it goes on every time. And furthermore, you also have to allocate the right amount of workers to the activity. So if you're hiring less than are needed in order to perform the activity, then they will not work, because you're pushing them too much. Then you also you will be in a situation where you'll need money, and there are two ways of getting money. Basically, you can just overdraw your account, and then you'll pay a premium dividend, or you can actually take up a loan, which is much more favorable. So, and then basically you can repay it either by rating the amounts that you want to repay, or actually repay it by using, for instance, percent. Okay. Then this is, for instance, how it actually looks in week 2. And here you might actually see that there's an event here as well. Something happens. So one of your competitors headhunted a key member of your project team. So we can already say now that will also happen tomorrow. So we'll basically walk around, and then we will pick one of the key members of your project, and then we'll allocate this to put that in another group. And then this person will be working in that group for the rest of the day, or the rest of the game. Okay? However, we will also allocate a person from another group to your group. Okay? This is real life. This happens all the time in the real world. So you have to manage this. You know this is going to happen. So you might figure out how you're going to cope with this. So a nice way is actually to make sure that it's not just one person who is sitting with the whole plan on his own computer. So you need to make this somehow a collective effort. Then basically here you'll be able to see the progress of all the activities and the total progress and the workers that are allocated on the site. And then you'll see the finance part, and then there will be a finance that is there's some incoming, outgoing and incoming financial measures here, and we use this for each week and also for the total. So you'll be able to follow your cost accordingly. Okay, so what do you need to take into consideration while developing this plan? It's basically stated here, so we'll just walk through. So there's something about scheduling. So you know there are some activities. These activities are related. We haven't developed the plan for you, so you have to read it out of the text. You have to figure out how the different activities are related. With different type of finish, start, finish, and all this kind of stuff. You have to develop this plan so you have an idea of the critical path and how you can speed things up and all this kind of stuff that we told you, or we worked with on the complexity perspective. So use a network planning, a Gantt chart, something like this. You decide for yourself. Manage your risk, develop some kind of risk register, think about what can possibly go wrong, and then try to estimate how would this affect your project and what type of measures do you have to take in order to counteract this. Yes, so risk is also important. Then the human resource is extremely important. Because without any resources on your project, you won't have any kind of progress. So you need to hire and fire workers and allocate the workers. And here you need to be aware of there is a 1 week of lead time before hiring and firing. Okay? Just like whenever you would be working in a traditional job. So now it's just 1 week, right? Yeah. If you allocate more people than you have available, all tasks requiring that resource will not progress. Then the finance part. Consider the total cost and cost time ratio. Develop a cash flow diagram. So you need to know how much money you get paid throughout the project, and then you need to keep track on your own expenses at the same time, and then you will be able to make an estimate on how many money you have to do for the loan, right? So plan the loans carefully. You can only have one loan at a time, so you might need to have a little more than you actually basically need. There's this the math behind the loan is that you have plenty of overdraft, which is nice, but it's costly. It costs 10% per week. The loan is only 1%, so it's very cheap loans. But of course, you should only the more money you will be lending, the less competitive your price will be. Okay, so you really have to make this to make an estimate here. And then something very important here as well is that your payment milestones. And the payment milestone follows like this. So you will have a 20% down payment for when you start the project. And this is all based on your bid. So the higher you bid you offer, the more payment you'll receive. If it's not too unrealistic, because then we'll change it, right? Then we have a payment for when you've completed task H. You have 50%, and then the last 30% is for project completion. But it will be so that you will need to have access to extra money to make this work. Okay. working with the finance, try to have an overview of what the different things cost, so you can actually make trade-offs between the different kind of possibilities that you have and opportunities. Okay. Then the final part here is actually you will need somehow to make this visible. You need to make this actionable. One thing is to make a plan. Another thing is that you need to prepare the plan in a way so you actually be able to execute it, and also in a way so you can change it subsequently. Because you'll need that through the execution Tuesday. So visualize your project, do it collectively, use post-its and this, and try to think about how you would organize this war room where you'll actually execute the project, where you have all the necessary information in order to do it. What is it that I need in order to make the decisions? So for instance, how would you make decisions for hiring and firing people or allocating people? So you actually keep very strict control on how many people that you have on site and so forth. Okay? Because as you see here, if you start screwing up in the hiring and or allocating of people, then you all of a sudden one of the activities will not progress. And if that is on a critical path, then it will influence the duration of your project, right? So, in preparing the bid, you should consider what are the total cost for you to do this project. You should consider how much money do I plan to earn on this project, and what are the contingencies that I should also take into consideration. So the risks that are associated with the project. The money that is reserved for unknown unknowns. And this is really a delicate balance here. Because the more pessimistic you are, the more contingency you add to your project, the more profit that you want to earn, the less competitive you get. Okay? So you would like to add some, but not too much. So you need to consider the profit bargain. You don't want to make a loss of it. And then you don't want to want the risk of losing the client either. And then basically we'll change it if it's unrealistic. Yes. So, and this actually mirrors very well an actual situation. So whenever your client kind of bid out contracts like this, so a lump sum contract or something similar, this is basically how it works. So usually in real life, there will only be one winner. Tomorrow you will all be allowed to play the game, right? So it's not just one group who will be playing the game. So, but in real life, only one is selected, and that is probably maybe the one with the lowest price. Okay, so you need to make sure that you are competitive here. In executing the game, you need to take some of this into consideration. So get an overview of all the information that you need, the time, activities of the relationship, Gantt chart showing when each activity is planned and to start and end, and the progress of activities, so you can measure this. The resources, required workers for each type and activity, total required workers for each type for each week, total hire and fire each week, and so forth. And finally, the finance as well. You can just, this is just some basic information for you to consider when you're developing. And you can see there are many different ways of using it. You might do it a full-blown Excel sheet where you have all the information. You might use post-its. You might use you might use different type of project planning tools. We have developed it so you are not expected necessarily to use Microsoft Project or something like that. You should basically be able to do this with Excel and post-its. And we encourage you actually to use post-its, because then you have a much more collective overview of what's happening. Yes. Is there any questions regarding this? It's a lot of information, right? Along with all the information that is in the actual game in itself. So yes. Now we'll do the quizzes, or in a short while you do the quizzes. This is basically just for us to test, or for you to test whether you know how the thing is organized, how the game is going to be played, and if you have any kind of lack of knowledge. And then there are 2 quizzes. It's part of the same quiz on the confidence level. Then basically that's about it. Oh, further, there's actually one thing that I wanted to tell you for a while. So you probably have noticed that whenever you're going to manage projects, we think that Post is extremely important. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought it here. This is also a part of this game, right? So, and in working with Post-its, I don't know how many of you actually know how to use Post-its. It's probably the most important management technology that you can work with. So whenever you work with Post-it, you're not supposed to tear them off like this, because then it bends like this, and then basically it will not stick very well. So if you want to tear out a Post-it, you need to do it like this, because then it doesn't bend. Okay? And then it sticks much better. Okay? So now you really have learned something important today. So take the quizzes, and then basically whenever you have taken the quizzes, then you can come and have a chat with me, or you can just walk to your to your group areas and then start planning the project.